Hello and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Law, the Old World, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our ghouls from our goblins, our snotlings from our skaven storm fiends, and our bloodthirsters from our bloodletters, and generally ask what's up with this Warhammer stuff. My name is Ben Kronbarber and I know pretty much fuck all about Warhammer. With me is my co-host Christopher Krallen Allen,
100101,
who knows absolutely fuck all about Warhammer,
00110110,
and my dear brother Darren,
Go fuck yourselves, everyone.
who knows so much about Warhammer it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. After gathering online to slay some vermin in the name of Sigmar, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance.
Hooray!
Ben, there's something a little bit staccato, a little bit not quite right.
It's a bit too charismatic, if I was being honest.
Yeah, there's something slightly Skynet about me today.
Okay, prepare to assimilate.
Explain yourself.
Well, I thought it would be a considerable improvement on my current voice, as I have the plague.
Baby.
Oh, baby.
Grandpapa Nurgle's giving you a visit.
Yeah,
Right.
gave me a deep throat. Deep-throated by what are they called? An unclean one? Is that
A great unclean one.
So-
You'd also have a
unclean
fractured
one.
neck because his gut would be bouncing on the top of your head.
So it's markedly different from balls on the chin, really, isn't it? Like
Balls on the chin.
Both.
Oh,
You'd be-
yes, both.
From both ends.
Heads just
Like,
bouncing up and down.
dunk.
Wow, what a lowbrow to start. Said the unclean one. Yeah, so what did you think of that? I mean, we're kind of cool and hip, we like to use AI. Well, that's the first time we've ever used it. Didn't you try to...
We're not cool and hip, and
And that wasn't AI.
that was an AI.
So you tried to use it once to write a script, Dhar, and it didn't...
I did, yeah. It was horseshit. Young people and everything they create is terrible.
It's different, and I don't like it.
It's different. I don't like it. Give me lead miniatures and some Werther's originals.
Dhar, for next episode, could we maybe have a little test of the AI written script? Just like a few paragraphs, just to see what comes out of it.
Yep.
Excellent. Love it.
I'll do a recap
No.
in AI as well. Maybe we'll save up. Maybe we'll stagger it. Right. We'll do
okay.
Darren next, and then I'll do an AI WhatsApp. Well, I won't do an AI. We'll do an AI recap.
But the AI has to do it literally off the top of their head. There can't be anything prepared.
Ben, was that actually an intro presented by AI, or was it just text to speech?
I thought you were about to say, is that an intro written by an AI? I was like, yes, Graal, after 3 years, I can reveal that I did not write the few paragraphs that we say at the start.
It does sound like AI from 3 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Bleep blurp. No, it's something called Speechify.
Okay.
I use it when I'm studying. I use it to read out what I'm reading, to speak out what I'm reading. I find it a lot easier to take in the information. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe I'm dyslexic.
When you're being spoken to, you absorb like stuff better than reading words.
When
on
I'm
a
reading
on
off
paper.
the page,
Yeah.
if I have that spoken at the same time, I absorb it a lot faster. I can
so
get through material a lot faster, and that Speechify is an extension of.
So you have to read and hear at the same time for it to really
I don't
sink
have
in.
to. Like I'm not broken. I'm saying it
These
helps
are my
me
terms and
absorb-
conditions.
Does it really help if you've got incontinence pants on as well, yeah?
Yes, yeah, hanging from the ceiling. Like it's a very specific condition for learning, which is why I don't study that much anymore. Right, before we go on, big thanks to everyone who supports the show. You guys are the tits. If you want to support us, click the Patreon link in the description where you can sign up today and join our Discord for as little as £3. Kral, what could £3 buy you today?
Mate, bus ride into Cambridge from where I am.
Okay.
£3. Probably a multi-pack of your local grocery stores crisps, £3.
I
You could probably get a quality
think,
bar of chocolate as well, actually.
I think all of those things really thought that not much, I think, is the end result there.
Or it could get you access to an absolutely bodaciously cool Discord channel with some bodaciously cool members and contributors.
Couldn't have said it better, Kral. Couldn't have said it better. For an extra £2 on Patreon, you can gain access to the full back catalogue of our bonus series, Chunks of Dhar. Dhar, can you sum up Chunks of You in one word?
It's exhausting. At this stage, it's like another 25 hours at least of additional content of us. Of Chris and Ben coming up with questions based on things they should be asking during the live records to drag out this fucking shit show for another hour a week, an hour a month.
Flesh it out.
But it's it's a lot of fun. Apparently, I can't tell the difference between COD records or Chunks of Dhar recordings and these recordings.
No,
it all blurs into one.
Or what one word means. Anyway. If you're also keen to support this podcast, but you don't fancy
I've got a word for you.
There's a ton of other ways that you can do that. Just click on the supporters link in the description where you'll find all our affiliate links and support platforms. Now, Crowley, you know what time is.
Yes, mate.
Hello, Reichland. It's time for Sirot's Ebu Recap.
Hey, let me just ask before Crowl launches into it. Is she real? Because I think I've seen a photograph of her as her dad.
As her dad.
As her dad.
And her dad.
And her dad.
Right.
No, she's real. Fiona she's a real, regular human being.
She's a real, regular robot. Yeah.
Right.
Bleep blurb. Arigato, Dr. Roboto.
She's Japanese? What?
She is Japanese. She's Japanese. She does a killer German accent. I don't know how she manages it, but it's really cool. Right, Crowley.
You ready for me? You ready to receive?
Whoa. Give us a recap, dude.
Last episode, we went through the millionth. It's a number.
It's the
thing. We covered more fucking Phoenix Kings.
Hey, guess what we're doing this episode?
In an Essex accent for no reason whatsoever. Teflis the Slayer. Belcarandis the Scholar King. You slag. Aphis the Poet. And then not a Phoenix King, Girathon. I'm done. That's me done.
Girathon? Who's Girathon?
Girathon. Advisor to the king, turned out to be a dark elf spy.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're done then, Kral.
Maybe we should expand a bit. Teflis the Slayer. Who did he succeed? Because I literally cannot remember who was it. Was it one of the Calidors?
It was definitely a Phoenix King, yeah.
He was definitely a Phoenix King. Replaced one of the Calidors, I think. He was a pretty vengeful Phoenix King, wasn't he? He formed or created the national service, essentially, in Ulthuan for all elves.
He ramped it up,
He ramped it up, killed in mysterious circumstances when he went for the Blade of Cain. What were the two theories of how he was executed or killed?
I've got it. So one was that he got killed by a dark elf assassin, which Dhar doesn't believe.
Dull. It's too boring. Too easy.
And then the other one was that his guards saw that he was going to pick it up and they were like...
He got tromboned. Yep.
Stabio. They placed a dagger near his heart.
Embedded. That's right. Yeah.
Embedded a dagger in him.
Yellow card.
Yeah. Interestingly, High Elves can't get tromboned. They are looted.
Not flugeled.
No, that's the dwarves.
Okay, yeah. I got it. Yeah, okay, cool. Not jaw harped. No.
No, that's Slanesh.
Belcarandis, the Scholar King, he did two things of note. He constructed the White Tower of Hoeth, or Shueth, without the S, Chris, as well as what, Ben? What else did he form that was significant? The Great Hunt, that's right.
Vagina.
A mariachi band.
Sorry, the third thing that was significant.
I don't know. I can't remember that. He built the tower.
I just said it was the Great Hunt, where princes and nobles
go. Oh yes,
go and
Sorry, it was what?
beasts and demons. The Great
Hunt.
Oh, Hunt. Yeah.
Yeah, he made Monster Hunters, didn't he? He was just like,
That's it.
You fucking nobles with nothing to do, all caught up in your reputations. Get out there and slay some monsters.
When you're thinking of the Monster Hunters as a group, what accent do they have? I'm going to go with West Country.
West Country, I was going to say that. Yes.
No, I like to now I've started it. I think all the elves have an Essex accent. The Great Hunt.
You slag.
Yeah.
But weirdly, all of the elf monster hunters are Gert Lash, Girdle.
And then there's one Welsh elf from Cathedral who doesn't know what's happening or why they're there.
Hey, boyo!
How did
Let's go hunt some monsters.
Oh, look,
Aberystwyth with
Chimera.
terrible Welsh accent.
I think all three of those were pretty bad.
Yeah. Finally, Aethys the poet, who went and made Ulthuan beautiful again, or more beautiful anyway.
Oh, yeah,
that was kind of only.
Was it
only
Mugma?
thing, wasn't it? What?
Mugma.
Make
Ulthuan
great
beautiful.
Oh, I thought that was going to be like a
Mubba.
Sugma or
Mubba.
like
Muba. I think it's
Candace or
pronounced
something.
Muba. Mabar.
Muba.
That was Aethys' only real kind of memorable thing, wasn't it? He just made Ulthuan gorgeous. Like carved the mountains, landscaped the mountains, made the cities like, I don't know, fucking lined it with gold and stuff and shit like that. Is that right?
But he bejeweled it, didn't he? He bejazzled it.
He bejazzled the...
But apart from that, he wasn't... That was it, really. That was Aethys' contribution.
Oh, yeah, and what have you done, Krell?
Huh?
Well, it's no small feat.
What have you bejazzled, mate? What have you architecturally bejazzled?
Show us your bejazzle. Go on.
Well, I mean...
Are we recording video on this? What?
For a start, shut up.
I know I am, but what
How does it feel, Chris? Does it feel so good when someone keeps talking over you, does it? 3 years I've had this pent up. What?
And here it comes.
So do you mean he hadn't achieved much in terms of like comparatively, like the others, went to war and, slayed things and he just...
Yeah, maybe I am discrediting too much, like landscaping mountains and like gilding cities in gold and stuff is pretty good. But he was more of a spender. Do you know what I mean? In terms of making major reforms, conscription, constructing the White Tower of Hoeth. I mean, great, you made everything look brilliant. It's a contribution.
He was a creator rather than a kind of destroyer or a changer.
Great at spending funds. And
he was a regnal influencer. That's how you think about him. He was an influencer.
Okay, got it. He was one of the OG influencers.
He was, yeah.
Got it. Okay, fine. I'm done. I'm spent. Over to you. Gives an episode, mate.
Gives an episode.
Go on.
Gives an episode. Got any episodes on you? Right.
So we leave Aethys the Scabbard, as I will refer to him now, because that's what he is.
The hipster king.
He had a knife stuck in him and just turmoil and calamy. We move on
Calamari.
then.
Delicious.
Calamari, yeah. He was squidded to death. Urgh.
Uar.
As with all things, we need a successor. So the next Phoenix King is Morvael the Impetuous, which really, as a nickname, is terrible. Like, it's something that he did when he was like 3, and that's just stuck with him forever.
Jesus Christ.
All right, I didn't think the horse would kick that hard. So once again, which kind of drawing on a theme, this Phoenix King was a lore master of the White Tower. So we're now looking at the third in a row of a kind of wizard from Safri, where the White Tower is. Ignore all previous mentions of the tower being anywhere else. Although he originated, you have one guess each as to where he was born. Chris.
Kralador.
Yay.
Ben.
The Badlands.
No, you failed miserably. He was from Barry. The in-jokes, dudes. Come on.
Ivris.
As a kind of academic, he was not really au fait with how things work in the real world. So he had no grasp of politics, really. And, anything he learned about warfare was from just a tome of history. Mr. Chris.
Why the fuck would you put someone like that in charge as king?
Because the lawmasters
They're impetuous
were seen
for a
as,
start.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Do you know what we need? The last guy was just a decorator. We need someone with a bit of vim in him, a bit of vigor.
We need impetuity. Is that even a word? Someone who has no political knowledge, no military acumen, and has a stupid nickname. This guy.
Yeah.
What has 2 thumbs and doesn't have a fucking clue? This guy.
I mean, they did have a choice between, what's his name? Aislinn the Apathetic and Morvael the Impetuous. And I think they made the right choice, to be honest.
Yeah.
So the very first thing he did was move to avenge the death of the previous Phoenix King. So he organized an enormous invasion of Nagaroth. But unfortunately, due to his book learning, as they say in certain parts of the world, the entire army was wiped out to an elf. And so...
Wow. It's quite an achievement.
Yeah, it was, and it didn't even make any headway. The fleet landed, and as the troops were egressing, which I believe is or exfilling, the military term, I don't know, infilling, landing, walking. As they were walking from the boat,
let's take it back to basics.
As they shimmied down from
as they cartwheeled
and so on, they were just picked off. It was like the D-Day landings, but Dark Elves. So the Dark Elves just massacred the entire fleet. It was a horrific dark day for Ulthuan, but the Dark Elves, the Druchii, remember it with great kind of fondness, and they refer to it as the Day of Blood. So
that's how I refer to most of the memorable days in my past as well. Well, remember that, the Day of Blood. Oh, it was great.
I have so many jokes that I'm just stopping myself from it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so the beaches of Nagaroth strewn with the dead armies of Ulthuan, and as word of this got back to Ulthuan, the entire population kind of went into this great moral panic, this great kind of fear-mongering, because if you'll recall, they had heard nothing from Nagaroth or any of the Dark Elves. They hadn't seen them, there hadn't been an invasion for like nigh on 1,200 years.
Oh, wow.
So they thought that the Dark Elves they had been wiped out by some other force. They had spent their strength kind of spraying it against the walls of Ulthuan.
They let their guard down.
But they were actually in the background brewing like a strong cup of tea. A strong cup of evil tea.
Mm.
They were girding their loins like loin girders.
That sounds like a really uncomfortable material to make pants from.
Yeah.
What were they doing in that 1,200 years, the Dark Elves?
Well,
lots of push-ups and kind of getting stronger montages.
Yeah, sort of, really.
Team building exercises.
Yeah, but it's Dark Elves, so if you choose the wrong thing, you die.
It's kind of like a team distilling exercise.
Well, yes, there was a distilling exercise carried out by Malekith, because what he was doing was winnowing out the weakest of the Dark Elves so that they would just become stronger and stronger. And I'm meaning sort of willpower and strength of arms rather than all these kind of beefcake Dark Elves tottering around because no one does leg day. They look like a thumbtack.
Me, on the other hand, I never miss leg day, do I, Ben?
It's like, I only do leg day.
You're like an upside down thumbtack, Krell.
A weeble.
A weeble.
If you slap him, you'll snap him in half. But by God, you could kick a VW Beetle to death.
Yeah, absolutely. Those calves. Oh, don't get me started.
So instead of being this dying race, the Dark Elves had simply been building up their military strength and making sure that their leadership was firmly in line with Malekith's desires. And so, buffering.
Whilst you're buffering, sorry, can I just get some context? Where did the Dark Elves ambush the High Elves again? Sorry, I missed that bit.
It was in Nagroth, in their hometown, in their home turf.
Right. So the High Elves, that's what I thought. The High Elves went over to Naggaroth and were picked off when they went to Naggaroth. And they went to Naggaroth because the High Elves went to Naggaroth in the first place because
they were avenging the murder of the previous Phoenix King by Girathon, the advisor.
Got it. Ah, yes. Okay, we're following on from Girathon. Cool. Brilliant. I was feeding the cat. I missed that bit. Got
it. So with a significant, section of the military dead, the Dark Elves re-invaded or invaderized, whatever the correct term is, Ulthuan once again via the Shadowlands and re-established the kind of their capital of Anlek. You'll recall that that's made up of two different black arcs that have been smushed together. Morvael, having learned that, his opinions on this stuff isn't really the best, decides to appoint a kind of general to look after all the military aspects of Ulthuan. And this is Menethus. Menthius. Menthol. So Menthol of Calidor, Menthius of Calidor, takes up the role of the kind of field marshal of Ulthuan's armies. And the very first thing he does is redefine the levy system. You'll recall that Phoenix Kings of the past had mandated that all High Elves now should be capable of bearing arms. Menthius takes that a step further and says, for a portion of every year, every High Elf has to serve. So instead of having this kind of pool of warriors that they kind of grab haphazardly, there's now 10% of the island is available for these 2 months, 20% for this month, or they set up a proper schedule. Yeah, they Excel spreadsheet it. They basically get in a kind of military Excel spreadsheet,
a work rota,
a work rota. That sounds vaguely sexual. Oh no, that's a work router. Yeah.
So this is the beginning of the Dark Elves. They are now doing almost a counter-offensive. They are starting to... They're breaching Ulthuan once again, getting a stronghold in there. Yeah. Oh, it's on.
Oh, Krell's getting excited.
Oh. Go on, High Elves. Take it, High Elves. Take it.
Okay, so Menethus makes some great... or Menthius makes some great inroads and starts to push the Dark Elves out of the Shadowlands back towards Anlek. So they're going to basically lay siege to Anlek. As this happens, it turns into like a meat grinder operation, and Morvael becomes more and more despondent at the sheer amount of High Elf dead. And it really kind of hits him hard. He's plagued by nightmares of all the dead and his responsibility for the dying of the High Elf race. And it turns out that this is not just his psyche preying on him. In fact, Malekith is bombarding him with these nightmares in his dreams. So he's under a kind of magical siege during the night. And as anyone who's been awake at 2 o'clock in the morning when the anxiety kicks in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, imagine that for decades, for the kind of mental condition is eroding.
So it's not just me. You guys get it too. Wake up in the middle of the night and just start catastrophizing about shit for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. And one night of it is enough to fuck me for the whole week. So a decade of it, that's like...
Oh, yeah.
Just sign me up for the asylum now. I'm nuts.
Yeah.
So
I'm crackers.
During the final assault, during this final kind of push from the siege, Mentheus' forces take Anlek and clear it out, but he himself is killed. And his dragon, a dragon called Nightfang, goes absolutely tonto, is I believe the phrase Ben uses.
Step on it.
Tonto, step on it. Jump on it.
Conga solo.
And it goes effectively insane. And much like, do you remember back in the Orc episodes, we talked about Skull Muncher? Is the wyvern. Yeah, very much the same kind of vibe where the dragon effectively creates a mile-long mosh pit of dead elves, be it the Dark Elves or High Elves.
Wow.
And this breaks the remnants of the Dark Elf, the Druki army, and they flee. They flee back to Naggaroth. They kind of up sticks and fuck off. And ultimately, Ulthuan is cleared of kind of the majority of Dark Elf presence once again. Unfortunately, news of his kind of great friend's death reaches Morvael, and it snaps him completely. And so he heads back to the Shrine of Azurian and walks back into the flame, and is effectively commits ritual suicide. Because
he
the
goes
burden
he goes in through the exit.
You don't go in through the exit.
You don't go. That's an out hole. You don't go in and out.
Is that what he did?
Yeah. And he burns up.
Fuck.
Wow.
Could any Phoenix King that had been kind of accepted by the flame on the right way through, is that what would happen to them if they went back through? They would you can't double dip.
It's a one-way ticket, baby.
Well, no, you shouldn't double dip. You can, but you shouldn't.
You can.
Just because you should doesn't mean you would, should, could, will.
And remember, always ask permission when you go in and out hole. What?
Fuck, okay. So he frazzle McDazzled then.
He frazzle McDazzles himself.
Why did he want to particularly go back to the Flame of Azurian to do that? He could have just jumped off a
used
cliff.
a lighter.
Just like, I'll do it.
yeah. I'll be here a while, but I'm gonna do it.
So was it symbolic, or did he have to pass that way?
No, he didn't have to go that way. He could have just opened a vein in the palace where he lived. But I think, and this is me hypothesizing, that he felt that the burden of kind of kingship that had been granted on him was granted in error, so he wanted to go through and give it back.
Right. Okay.
You did say elves are very emotionally dramatic, aren't they? They don't. Everything's theatre. You don't just end it. No, you go on an epic voyage using a lot of resources, time, and money to go out in a blaze of glory.
And then run back through the flame crying.
The wrong way. You're going the wrong way. Oh, he's done it. He's done it already.
He's done it.
He's just write a resignation letter.
Yeah.
Lads, as it turns out, this wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I hereby abdicate.
I think we're basing this on, on the idea of somebody that hadn't spent 10 years having anxiety.
Rationality may not have been there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if I had done that, I'd walk backwards through a flame.
No, you'd moonwalk through the flame.
I'd moonwalk back there. Yeah. I'd vogue back through the flame.
Going like this as you went backwards. Yeah.
Peace, bitches.
Flipping the bird at everyone.
Wow, okay.
We move on to the next Phoenix King, Bel-Hathor.
Lots of bells.
There's a lot of bells.
Bel Shamalama Ding Dong, Bel Corandis.
You know, you said like Tor means like town or fortress, I think you said. Does Bel mean something? Is it Ben?
Yeah, it means that guy. So that guy Hathor. We are in the situation once again where the High Elves find themselves in need of a new king, during war.
Again.
Or back on the tail end of war. So really, it's getting a bit monotonous, to be fair, isn't it?
It is. Malekith's got it right. He outlives them all. Do you know what I mean? He's solid. He should be Phoenix King. I think the High Elves at this point are looking back going, shit. We should have kept Malekith sweet. He looks like he's a pretty good leader. He's outlived all of our kings.
Unfortunately, the obvious choice, Menethus of Calidor, was dead. And so they went into a significant period of kind of name-calling, kind of, much like the election of a pope. I imagine that there's a lot of name-calling during the election of a pope.
Square Bear.
Square Bear.
Pope Square Bear.
Yeah.
Given that they couldn't agree, what they went for was this ultimate compromise candidate, who was, once again, a wizard prince from Safri. So we're now, I think this is the 4th in a row Phoenix King associated with the White Tower.
All right.
And they picked Bel-Hathor, that guy Hathor. And really, he was the, as I said, the compromise candidate because everyone thought he could be manipulated. Everyone thought that they could get him to kind of advance their own schemes, as I believe the phrase is, and that the Elven court itself would rule kind of en masse via this puppet king.
Right. Was he a bit wet? Was he a bit George W. Bush sort of thing?
As much as Morvael was a kind of academic, this guy was a kind of quiet, dusty academic.
Okay.
Whether he had an innate strength or whether it was granted to him by Azurian as he walked through the flame, they could not have been more wrong. This guy went in very much like the Nutty Professor, I think. He went in this kind of weeb guy and then came out, as I believe the young people say, Chad. He was just
an absolute
completely...
G. Wow.
Yeah, absolute G.
Just came out like that. Just... Where the toilet's at, bro? Pang, pang.
Would you say it was like you seen the new Captain America with Chris Evans in it, where he goes in, Captain Steve Rogers goes in, he's a weedy little 5.5 foot dweeb and comes out 6.5 foot hench as fuck, can leap over a 3-story building, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but where he was before, he was very kind of a quiet-spoken academic, lots of the word actually and readjusting his spectacles. He then he then came out this kind of gregarious, hey, cunts, how's it going?
You, fuck off. You do this. Just very self-assured.
He came out a complete jock douchebag.
Oh, I know exactly who the analogy for this guy is. The Sheriff of Nottingham in Kevin Costner's Robin Hood.
Yes, brilliant.
What's his name? The guy.
Alan
Rickman. You, my room, 10 o'clock. You, my room, 10:30, and bring a friend.
Yeah. I'm going to cut his heart out with a spoon. Oh, what a
May
film.
he rest in peace.
Yeah, what a legend. It isn't Christmas unless Hans Gruber gets thrown off the Nakatomi building. Let me just get that.
The Nakatomi Tower in Ulthuan. What? Yeah.
Tor Nakatomi.
Nakatomi Lek.
Bel Nakatomi. President.
That guy Nakatomi. It was just this architect going, what? How big? So anyway, his first decree basically is we can't go to war with Nagaroth again. Let's just shore up our defenses, set patrols around the Shadowlands, and just get on with our lives, because ultimately this is a war of extinction. It's going to end with maybe one elf being alive of any side, and that's of no use to anyone, especially not to the population of Ulthuan. So they settle in for a good, long, hard rule of peace. That's maybe I could have phrased that better. Bel-Hathor nixing the idea of the constant grinding warfare with the Dark Elves, sets out not only to kind of shore up the defenses of Ulthuan, but to be a bit more expansionist, to get out there in terms and see what the world is. You have to keep in mind that Ulthuan's really been an isolationist continent for 2,000 years at least. The great exodus from the War of the Beard. So what's that, 3,000 years before? That was the last time there was really any kind of high elf presence in the old world, and indeed outside of Ulthuan, rather than, they would have naval patrols around Ulthuan and the occasional disastrous war with Naggaroth, but really they hadn't been in contact with any other race. And so he sets up a chap called Finubar, who is an explorer, a kind of naval kind of savant, and sets him up as an ambassador to go out and make contact with these historically old settlements. With that guy Hathor refocusing on not only elf or the Ulthuan-centric kind of paradigm, where he didn't really care about the Dark Elves, we'll set up patrols, it'll all be fine. He then starts to think, well, maybe we should have an exploration of everything right of us on a map. And so this kind of precipitates after over a few hundred years where really ineffectual Norse raiders kind of get through the magical protection of Ulthuan and the shifting isles and raid kind of one or two settlements. So he's like, well, who are these guys? Like, what's going on over there that they think they can come over here in their ships that are actually quite seaworthy?
Are they?
Didn't we leave these?
Because they're quite like kind of Viking-y. Is that
Viking-y guys?
Kind of,
yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, they're pretty decent at shipbuilding. Then are their ships? Do they look like kind of Viking longboats?
They look like Viking longboats. In the game Man of War, it's effectively giant Viking longboats.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Love it.
With real dragon heads. No, it's carved wood. It's the same thing.
With real wood.
With real wood.
Laminated longboats. Single use. By the time you get to the other shore, it's just inflated and it just sinks.
Swollen.
Swelled.
Warped.
It's effectively, so, all these Norse guys come over in their single-use kayaks and just take over these small villages and then build new single-use kayaks and head back to Norska.
One of them is like, if only we could make them more than single-use, we could save so much material.
And after generations, that's their purpose in life, just to keep moving on to make single use this, single use that. They've lost all meaning of like everything else. Like we're just doing this now. We don't know why we're doing it anymore.
I mean, to be fair, the destruction of the world through chaos at the end of the end times, spoiler alert, is that was a small mercy compared to the environmental damage that single-use culture was.
And they oust anybody that tries to suggest anything that's not single-use. I've made these jeans that should last for more than a day. Get it! He's a witch! Burn him! Burn him!
I'll give you one example of how batshit these Norse raiders were. There was one guy called Magnus the Mad, which is a bit on the nose.
Wonder what he's like.
He arrives in a single-use longship with
nobody else wanted to go with him.
Yeah, like 200 men, and he's confronted by the Sea Guard of Lothern, which are the kind of elite marines in the classical sense of high elf culture. They kind of form up with spearmen in the front and bowmen at the back to be able to, handle enemies at range and close up. So his 200 men face off against 10,000 high elf
fucking hell
Sea Guard, and he goes, charge, and that's it. He's never heard from again. Everyone is. No shit. It's just peppered They just look like porcupines, I suspect. No one even made it to this within spear distance.
But you got to love the gumption.
That's it. Yeah.
Can-do attitude. Don't worry about the stats. Don't worry about them. Just get up that.
Do you think it's the kind? It's something so insane? Do you think like Bel-Hathor himself came down and just kind of like gave the bodies a little kick and went, "Whoa, what a thing to see." It's crazy. It's crazy. Who are these guys?
If I had 10,000 of them, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So he sets up with a kind of well-known explorer and naval savant known as Finubar. Not Finbar. Finubar.
Finubar.
And so he appoints him as the kind of the official explorer. He kind of sets him up as a privateer. Do you know, like Elizabeth I did for Francis Drake, where he was effectively a pirate in the employ of the crown. It's a similar kind of vibe. This guy was sent out to explore, to have a look. Perhaps not rank piracy, but, maybe he dabbled. Who knows? And so he heads back to the Old World, and he is stunned. Stunned, I tell you. That noise was me thumping my fist on the table. To discover what he assumed would be a load of shit-covered, smelly people living in mud huts. He lands and he finds an entire kind of Bretonian kingdom, an entire empire of man, an entire something of Astalia.
A proper Christopher Columbus moment. Yeah.
That kind of idea where he's just going, holy shit, sorry. Wait, when did you guys come here? You've always been here. What?
I brought a flag. I was going to see a flag
Look,
here.
I have this 2,000-year-old book that clearly says you're mud humpers. There's just... What's going on? When did you learn to put one stone on top of another? What's going on there? And so his embassy, as I suspect the technical term is received at various courts. And while the clear advantage of allying with these new kingdoms is obvious, when he sends messages back to Bel-Hathor, Bel-Hathor becomes kind of concerned. And so he decrees that no human, no non-elf should ever set foot on Ulthuan. And that is partially done for two reasons.
Racist.
The first is, more xenophobic. The first is done because, the only experience they've had with non-elves so far have usually been during combat and war. So either being raided or when they go and fight dwarves, for instance. The second is that he's concerned about diluting the already thinned ranks of High Elves on Ulthuan with non-High Elves. So he doesn't want his people to become a minority in their own island kingdom. As part of his travels, at Bel-Hathor's request, Finubar ends up recontacting or discovering the elves of Athel Loren. So these are, remember, effectively the wood elves. So he makes contact, on behalf of Ulthuan with the wood elves. And it's the first time in a millennia and a half that any formal contact has been had. And so there is...
And do they get on like a house on fire?
They don't really get on like a house on fire because their cultures are so now wildly different. It's...
Sorry, bro, we're just, well into trees.
Yeah.
You drive on the left, we drive on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, that place still exists. Holy shit. It's that kind of idea.
Right.
So they're aware of Ulthuan, but it's only kind of ancestral tales, because as listeners will recall, the Wood Elves are the High Elves that refused to go back to Ulthuan at the end of the War of the Beard and settled in Athel Loren and became tree humpers. Finubar, having explored the Old World and the coast of Araby and a little bit up into Norsca, returns to Ulthuan with tales of daring do, gifts and treasures from the various kingdoms, and reports back to Finubar. reports back to Bel-Hathor. And Bel-Hathor sort of softens his stance and says that he will now allow some, on a case-by-case, non-elves to step onto Ulthuan itself.
But they have to fill out the Esther form, pay an admin fee of $45. Yeah. Have you ever been involved in or instigated the War of the Beard? No.
Do you know where Malekith is? Is that kind of straightforward questions? I love the notion that all those kinds of questions are so straightforward, and they do it for a very specific reason. Is that it's easier to put someone in jail for perjury and fraud than it is for terrorism?
Is it?
Yeah.
So
do you know where such and such is? No. And if it turns out that you do know where that person is, you can go to jail for perjury. Yeah.
Wow. And that's easier to incarcerate someone
it's easier
than
to prove,
being a terrorist. Yeah. Fucking hell. All right, okay. So you're better off sometimes if you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I'm a fucking terrorist. Like,
no, because that's a full confession, and they can just pin you to a wall.
Can't you just say I don't know?
Okay, no, ask me again.
Do you know Malekith?
No, do over. Yeah.
Do you know Malekith? I'm not sure.
Define Malekith.
Yeah. Define
no. Yeah. Have we been at kink parties together? I don't know. I can't say.
I know A Malekith.
And B Malekith. Which Malekith are you know?
Are you feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders? Are your magical energies feeling a bit depleted? Well, worry not. Better Elf, Ulthuan's premier mental health support program, is here to help you navigate the agonizingly twisted paths of your mind. Better Elf pairs you with one of our trained emotional archivists of Seafarer, who will gently peel back the layers of social protection and dig out your most troublesome thoughts. Whether you're dealing with the pressure of ruling a kingdom, or simply feeling a bit down about the slow and inevitable decline of our race, Better Elf is here to lend you an empathetic ear. Our program combines traditional elven wisdom with modern, pleasure-based counselling techniques to help you break free from the chains of tradition. Quell the emotional turmoil you have suppressed as you begin an enchanted journey of self-discovery. After all, even the mightiest of elves could use a little laughter and support now and then. Better Elf, where the oppressive becomes expressive. Terms and conditions apply. Inclusion within the Better Elf community requires at least 3 orgies a year. He revokes his decree on non-elves setting foot on Ulthuan. Trade absolutely explodes in his face like a premature wasp name. And ultimately, Bel-Hathor, referred to as the Sage, because he was a herbalist, he passes away peacefully one evening. I don't know doing what. He's into slam poetry. Maybe he passed away mid-slam. Can you imagine? Can you imagine someone having a heart attack mid-stage dive? And it just his corpse lands in the crowd and is bounced around. I'd love to see that. That'd be hilarious.
I don't think you've ever been to a slam poetry night, have you? Slam poetry is not named because people it's not named after the sound poets make when they stage dive. That's not.
Well, let me just stop you there. I have no interest in slam poetry then, in that case.
Let me stop you there. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit.
At his passing, Bel-Hathor, as we've discussed, died mid-stage dive, peacefully.
It's what he would have wanted.
Yeah, it's what he would have wanted. The next Phoenix King then is, guess who? Finubar. He is elected as the next Phoenix King.
Conspiracy? Much?
Maybe. I'd never considered that, because no. He's
Okay.
He's the guy who went over to the old world.
Yeah, he's the explorer.
He's the explorer, and he then convinced the previous Phoenix King to kind of open the gates for trade and movement of non-elves. And then that guy died, and then Finubar was like, I'm king now.
Finubar, who is revealed later to actually be Girathon. No. So he... the very first thing Finubar does upon ascension to the Phoenix throne in Lothern is he leaves Ulthuan. And he goes back to the old world and wants to make a full kind of Doomsday Book style assessment of the strengths and opportunities. He does a SWOT analysis of the kingdoms and races of the old world.
Wow.
And comes to the conclusion that, we probably should start allying. If we, the elves, who know what's good for everyone, decide that this is going to be a good idea, then clearly it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And
the world should know about it.
This leads this kind of, we'll use the term desertion of the Phoenix throne to go and fanny about in the old world. Leads to a lot of kind of political maneuvering and machinations, a great word, back in the kind of Phoenix court. It's a bit like everything to do with the Phoenix King ends up being Phoenix something. Hand me my Phoenix cup.
Right.
It's the something of someone kind of idea.
Yeah. All very third person.
And so they start kind of jockeying for position, the court that is, and starting to kind of suggest that perhaps Finubar has met with death on his great kind of abandoning exploration. And so they start kind of heading towards electing a new Phoenix King. And then the Everqueen, Alariel, listeners will recall, I've mentioned Everqueens before. I can't be bothered discussing who it is. Fucking listen to the episode again. She comes in, all Billy Big Balls, and says, you're servants of the Phoenix throne. The Phoenix King is very much still alive. You owe your continued existence to, the good graces of the Phoenix King and his forces. And so they're kind of whipped back into line.
Sorry, just to interject. The Everqueen, we haven't actually heard anything about her. Is she still the same person who's just been constant? Is that still like the first Phoenix King?
No. There are as many Everqueens as there are Phoenix Kings, although they're not kind of a one-to-one relationship, as it were.
They don't rotate in the same way. They kind of...
Yeah. Like the Phoenix King has died, quickly off the Everqueen and let's get another one in.
It's a great and interesting question because the Everqueen is always the daughter of the Phoenix King and the previous Everqueen. And so
incestuous.
It is, and my concern is that some Everqueens last longer than the Phoenix King. Does that mean then that they have to have sex with their own father?
But surely if the new...
I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this being clipped and put out there, by the way. This is just it's a horrible thing.
Yeah. So genuinely, this is us being ignorant. We are not...
So the new Phoenix King gets elected.
Yeah.
That new Phoenix King gets with the previous Everqueen.
They live together for 1 year. Yeah,
they live together for 1 year. Have a new daughter.
Yeah,
I'm guessing that the old Everqueen has to stay Everqueen until that daughter
until she passes away. I think. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
So what
happens if the Phoenix King remains? What happens if her father remains? Does then the daughter have to marry her father at that point?
We don't know. These are interesting questions that should be addressed on a podcast.
These are interesting, disgusting questions.
Yeah.
If the Phoenix King gets with the old Everqueen and has a daughter, and that old Everqueen has to stay queen until she dies.
Oh no,
she might die before. No, she might die after a new Phoenix King is elected, and so the daughter that's just been had wouldn't ever get the opportunity to become the Everqueen. Do you know what I mean? Because the next Phoenix King would then have to be with, I'm guessing, the Everqueen from 2 times ago. Because the previous Everqueen would still be.
Oh, it's all getting very fanny.
Yeah, that's
all.
Now, I want listeners to be completely aware that while this is satirical, it's also a reflection of European royalty since day dot.
Right.
Yeah. It's all about kind of. So you end up with people with no chins.
So when we're done with the Phoenix Kings, are we going to go all the way back to the start and do the same thing for the Everqueens?
No, because very misogynistically, they're not focused on in the lore.
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah, it's a bit shit. I agree.
Okay, so Gladriel then is the current Everqueen.
Alariel.
Sorry,
Gladriel.
Wrong IP, bitch.
Every episode. I mean, we've done about 3 of the bingo things in Somi's bingo card so far, and this is the fantasy podcast. Ultimately, Finubar returns and expands upon the kind of initial thoughts of Bel-Hathor and opens up Lothern, the city, to non-elves. Listeners will recall there are 3 gates through which you have to pass to get to the inner sea and the inner kingdoms of Ulthuan, and the non-elves are allowed past the first one. And then only chosen people may be allowed past the first, or past the second one. Yeah, I was about to say past the second one. You know, not the third second one.
No,
there are 5 second gates.
What would the third second one be?
Of the second row, it would be the third one.
Fucking hell. Brain melt.
And so Finubar kind of incites the huge increase in trade between Ulthuan and the Old World, and ultimately this sees a high elf enclave set up in the city of Marenburg. Remember, that's the port one. That's it's a little bit Dutch. Some high elves. I don't know why I did Sean Connery there.
Smoking a pancake.
Shout out to the Dutch. Stroop waffles are the fucking shit. I'm addicted to those things. Stroop waffles.
Of all of your entire culture, these waffles are your best achievement.
Yes.
It's not the Dutch masters, the painting masters, not them.
No. None of that.
It's absolutely not slavery.
Not even the clogs or the cheese. It's the Stroop waffles.
It's the Stroop waffles. So, Finubar is the current Phoenix King. He's the Phoenix King at over the previous couple of 100 years, certainly, and has overseen some great victories and tragedies and various other things end in ease for the High Elves and for the world in general. What he's principally known for, however, is, as I said, the expansionist mindset, but also the great assistance he gave to the forces of the Old World during the Great War against Chaos, which is in 2300 AS, or the IC as the kind of the pedants will take it, the imperial calendar. The Great War Chaos is not just something in the Old World. It kind of washed over the entire world, and so a great many kind of starting skirmishes and wars, and certainly in the High Elf world, we see a number of these that happened quite quickly upon him ascending to the throne. The first is the reemergence of a Slaaneshi keeper of secrets, a greater demon of Slaanesh called Nakari. Keen-eared listeners will remember that Nakari was one of the 4 greater demons that Inarian had to best. Round 1 during the creation of the Great Vortex.
Was that the one that pulled what's-her-face apart? Narian's missus?
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's returned and is trying to wipe out the kind of bloodline of Anarian. And ultimately, he is slain on the steps of the Shrine of Azurian by a pair of brothers, who are what I like to call
Four
twins.
brothers.
They're just brothers.
Brothers from the same mother and father.
Ew. No,
Yeah, that's out there. That's really out there. These are, of course, Tyrion and Teclis, who become enormously famous in the lore.
the great rapping duo, Tethlis.
Tyrion and Teclis, also known as Crisscross, they will make the forces of chaos jump.
And Milli Vanilli and Bananarama and
Milli Vanilli, the greatest ventriloquist dummies in the history of the world.
didn't they famously argue like, no, we really can sing, and then they sang live on TV, and it was just like, oh.
But this really precipitated a number of incursions by the forces of chaos and indeed Dark Elves onto Ulthuan proper. The kind of first massed battle is the battle at Shining Ridge in Tiranoc. Ben, what's Tiranoc famous for?
Oh, dinosaurs. No.
No, that's Exodites on a different podcast.
No, it's Turok.
It's got wacky time, hasn't it?
Not Turok, you douchebag.
Is it the wacky time place?
No, that's Illyrian.
Crowler.
You made me look stupid then.
Yeah, you made me look like a dick.
Well, we'll move on.
What was the answer?
Well, I'm moving on to the answer. It was the...
I thought you were just going to move on. We'll never know.
No, we'll never know. So this amazing, really crucial battle happened in a place we'll not talk about. And it was between... Tiranoc is the other kingdom that was savaged during the Sundering.
Is it 10% land?
Yes, 10% land. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it was
where all the charioteers are based.
The charioteers. God, I tell you what. I mean, clearly you were reading something while I was speaking, because that's really in there. That's really in there.
No, it's the only thing that I remember, because there was the lion chariots, but they were in a different place, and then there was these chariot guys who've just got no land. They've got no land. They need all the land in the world.
They just keep doing donuts in whatever the equivalent of an Ulthuan car park is.
Yeah.
Right, here we go. Which kingdom are the lion chariots from?
Thrace.
Thrace.
I have to give the points to Chris there, because he said the answer first.
Reluctantly. You can't.
The Battle of Shining Ridge, the kind of great dark elf general Macanarth. It's a real name, Macanarth.
Wow.
Maca for short.
I mean, it's one of those ones where you think that was a Friday morning, wasn't it? When they came up with that. Fuck it, just call him Macanarth. Hand me the Scrabble bag, and whatever letters I pick out will make a name out of this. So a huge dark elf force tried to penetrate deep into Ulthuan's soft interior and was turned back when Macanarth, the general, was... Unfortunately, I'm going to have to use the word penetrated. He was penetrated and cast off of his Cold One chariot. That is a chariot drawn by Cold Ones, which are effectively...
Dinosaurs.
Velociraptors from Jurassic Park. And...
I'm a dinosaur.
What are you doing?
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
There's a dinosaur.
The Tiranoc prince Gal-Hathor hoofed his spear at what's his name, Abracababra, and flew him off the chariot that he was on. And whee! Interestingly, the spear that was thrown was actually his great ancestors, who's unnamed, but was an associate of Anarion. So technically, he was a prince. So Prince Gal-Hathor, if you recall, anyone who
threw his ancestors. It wasn't a spear. It's my uncle.
No, it was a spear, you doof. but it was a weapon that was forged during the reign of Anarion, if you recall.
So anybody who has it makes them a prince.
Yeah. So for that moment where Macanarth was alive, but the spear was in him, he was technically a prince of Ulthuan. I think that's how it works. I'm not sure.
That's hilarious. But do you not have to steal it? I don't think being impaled by a counts as stealing. Like, I stole this. I die a prince.
Oh. Give me a fancy funeral.
Mom, look at me now.
Ultimately, the forces of what's-his-chops, Macanarth, were wiped out by a charge of Illyrian reavers, and these are the horse archers of Illyria. Now, before you ask me, Chris, no, these are mounted archers, not archers with huge forearms that shoot horses at people.
And definitely not Illyrian ravers, yeah?
Ravers.
No, that's the infantry. That's the really ineffective infantry of
armed with glow sticks.
Yeah. Topless. Yeah.
Topless with bucket hats and man bags.
Yeah.
And a dust mask with an E on it.
And just forever having a roll-up cigarette in their mouth, which they just won't light. They're just walking around like
just
fucking
soaked in sweat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Always asking for a lighter, but never actually lighting the cigarette that's in their mouth. Yeah.
With cash register jaw.
Sorry, Darren, just reliving younger days.
Younger days when we were cool and hip.
And now we do a podcast.
So how dare you? So this started the sort of, how would you describe it? The erosion of order by chaos. So we're looking at about 200 years before present. 300 years before present. Which ultimately leads to what's referred to as the Battle of Wailing Fen on Ulthuan, where a bloodthirster, a chaos demon, a greater demon of Khorne, manifests in the lands of Barry, unfortunately. Barry in Ivris. And
Barry!
Yeah, it was a bad time. I've just run out of adjectives.
Well, doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it was a bad time. It wasn't great. So yes, the Battle of Wailing Fen, where in fact it was an elf ruler named Moranion, who is Eltharion's father, summoned as many of his allies to the shores of Ivris as possible, including a sizable contingent of the Phoenix Guard, who are the kind of priest warriors, or as I like to say, warrior priests of the Shrine of Azurion, to beat back the chaos demonic forces and to cleanse Ulthuan of their filthy taint, if you accept his propaganda. And, the mass ranks of the elves faced off against the gibbering hordes of the demons of chaos, and it was total war, trademark. And they were able to kind of encircle the demons to some extent, but every time the greater demon, the bloodthirster, was able to break through their lines and, force the elven army to reposition. So it was a constant, battle.
How big is a bloodthirster?
Depending on the artwork and the miniatures, okay? So if you go by miniatures, they're about 20 feet tall.
Right, okay. So
not insignificant. In some of the artwork, you have bloodthirsters that are 60 to 100 feet tall.
Right.
But obviously...
I'm assuming
it's much like
a greater demon isn't a uniform constant. It could be, it's just anything from a certain power up. So you could have you could have 100-foot bloodthirster.
Yes, and any bloodthirster, I suspect, could manifest as being 100 feet.
Right.
It's how much chaotic energy they're able to manifest around them, which is an interesting point to raise, because as part of the High Elf army, not only did they have the Phoenix Guard, but they also had phoenixes. Phenai? Phoenix's. So
Phoenix's eye.
Phoenix's eye. That's something else. That's when it burns. One of these Pheni faced off against the Bloodthirster itself and swooped down, ready to kind of rip it to shreds with its flaming talons. But the Bloodthirster lashed out with its whip. Bloodthirsters have whips.
Oh, yeah.
And
Whips.
went round the neck of the Phoenix, and it, despite its considerable size and its considerable kind of wing beat power, the Bloodthirster pulled it down towards it and tore its throat out with its teeth, with their teeth.
Wow.
The teeth in the mouth.
Yeah. So they,
Okay. Yeah, got it.
So they, so the Phoenix kind of, instead of just dying, bursts into flames and kind of billows out in all directions, pushing back both armies. But the Bloodthirster, enraged, because it's obviously a servant of Khorne and demands blood, made a beeline for the High Elf lines once again. But as it was making its way forward, the kind of burning remains of the Phoenix exploded, kind of wiping out a significant portion of the middle of the Bloodthirster's army. And then this kind of Phoenix reborn smashed into the back of the Bloodthirster like a kind of flaming comet, and its talons went straight into its body and kind of tore the demon's heart, because apparently demons have heart, depending on which bit of the lore you read.
They're just misunderstood.
Tore its heart open, and the Bloodthirster, having lost its kind of anchor to reality, kind of faded to nothing. It kind of dissolved in a kind of fit of screaming rage, much like a child who's been denied a purchase of a new toy. No, I've not been scarred by having kids. The Bloodthirster was the focal point of all the chaotic energy that was holding the demonic army within the real world. And with its demise, with its destruction, the demons began just to kind of fade back into the warp, much like kind of really bad transitions from one scene to another in awful movies. No, I'm not going. Yeah, that was terrible. And so, yes, so almost 20 years after the Battle of Wailing Fen, the Everqueen then, in another incident, is poisoned by Urian Poison Blade. Guess what he has? And he's a Dark Elf assassin who was able to actually not only land in Ulthuan, but get into the Inner Kingdoms, which is this thing that has never happened, really, in a couple of thousand years. But because the winds of magic are blowing so strong with this increase of chaos energy within the world, he's able to bypass areas normally, impenetrable to the forces of evil on Ulthuan, and he's able to get in and kill the Queen, which, not great. Not great.
Which was nice.
Which was nice. We then come to with that event, it's not a causal relationship, but it happened at the same time as the Great War against Chaos in the Old World, where the forces of Chaos wash over Kislev and make good headway into the Empire until Magnus the Pious is able to repulse the forces of Chaos. I'm deliberately summarizing this because we're going to cover this when we cover the Empire in quite a bit of detail. And during that time, not only is the Everqueen assassinated, but Dark Elves invade Ulthuan once again, this time in concert with a lot of Chaos forces. So we're looking at mortal, demonic, and beastmen that are able to get in and kind of swarm the outer kingdoms of Ulthuan. Ultimately, within a year, the Dark Elves are driven out of Ulthuan once again after effectively a couple of years of constant warfare. This is where the citizen levy, almost all of them are activated. So you have almost every being on Ulthuan fighting the enemies that are also on Ulthuan. And ultimately, Ulthuan is freed.
Yay!
In the aftermath of the Great War against Chaos, the High Elves decide they have to send allies, or they have to send forces to their allies. And they send one of the brothers, Teclis, who's a high kind of archmage lore master of Safri, and he is accompanied by a couple of other mages and some, and a small army to shore up the forces of the Empire, or the combined forces of the Empire and the Dwarves, on the notion that if they can stop Chaos getting into the kind of into the old world, if they can push them back, it means there's another buffer between Ulthuan and the kind of great enemy. This ultimately, once they're successful and everyone's won and they're all happy and Chaos is beaten back, it is at this point that perhaps the most important event in the old world happens, and that's where Teclis, the Archmage, founds the colleges of magic in the Empire, and that's where we get the individual winds of magic being able to be specialized in by human mages or mortal mages.
Is that why Teclis and what's his face are so? So who founded them? Teclis and
Teclis.
Just Teclis.
Yeah,
is that part of the reason why he's so famous?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Part of the reason why he's so well
famous.
You're so famous.
I don't know what kind of impression that was.
Growl.
Yeah. So with that done, he remains there for a decade or so, and with him his kind of chief assistant Finrir. They train human mages to be able to kind of withstand the seductions of chaos and harness the individual winds of magic for the powers of good. Teclis then returns to Ulthuan, where he's given the formal position of High Lore Master of the White Tower. So he's the head honcho of High Elf Hogwarts.
Nice.
Yeah.
Everything's great.
Everything's great from there.
It's real good.
From there, I mean, the recent sort of from that point, which is the most significant thing that the High Elves do, there are a number of other instances within the more recent history, the previous 200 years. We will cover them in more detail when we discuss the kind of named heroes in the next episode. But just to kind of, in general, we're going to look at the kind of continued decline of the dragons of Ulthuan, where they become harder and harder to wake. And so a great hero, Prince Imric of Calador, he's an actual prince, not a sword prince.
I've just been stabbed in the chest, prince.
Yeah, he's not a penetrated prince. What?
Yeah, an incidental prince.
Yeah, so he calls a great council of the kind of Caledorian princes to see if they can wake the dragons and see what happens. And really, what they're wanting to try is to regain the military kind of advantage of having dragons in a kind of melee-based society, being able to breathe fire and maybe dump on them, who knows. And so they want to really, if this is to be the end of the High Elves, they're going to go out swinging dragon dicks, effectively.
Yeah, man.
The only other points I think that it would be good to make in terms of Finubar is really to do with both the Empire and the Greenskins. and to some extent the Dark Elves again. Under the kind of leadership of a pirate, one of the coastal areas of Ulthuan is raided, and in response, a sea lord called Aislinn goes, again, to use Ben's phrase, Tonto, and effectively sacks.
I think that was
the
Kral's
city
phrase.
But
I'll take it.
Sacks the city of Marienburg, which, remember, is fantasy Dutchland. There's a great sea battle that happens in the kind of just outside of the port between the pirate forces and the High Elf forces, which kind of cools off trade between Ulthuan and the Old World for about 2 decades. But eventually the kind of avarice of High Elf princes takes hold once again, and so the Sea Elf Quarter, as it's known in Marienburg, is repopulated and trade resumes in earnest. Off the back of this, the Sea Lord Aislinn he's viewed as a kind of a ruthless character, and Finubar gets the sense that the High Elves are going to need that kind of ruthlessness, that kind of, effectively, how would you describe them? The sailing version of John Wick. You're going to need a character or a general, an admiral, I suppose, like that.
So he kills his dog, and then
he arranges to have his dog killed, and then goes, "Oh mate, your dog's dead. I'm so sorry. Look, these guys did it."
Yeah.
And so Aislinn starts raiding against the Dark Elves. Ultimately, unfortunately, he's lost. There's no mention. His ship goes down off of Nagaroth, and the feeling is they've lost a great warrior, a great leader. But lo and behold, about 6 months later, who washes up on the shores of Ulthuan? It's only fucking Sea Lord Aislinn.
Azag the Destroyer. Oh,
yeah, it's Aislinn himself, and he is completely unharmed. There's no signs of any injury whatsoever, and
except he has no head.
Except for complete, total decapitation. He's pristine.
This is nothing. Is what he would have said if he had a head.
Right? Yeah. You should check out the other guy.
The other guy has no body. But he claims to have no memory of the previous 6 months. No recollection at all of his ship going down. Yeah, we've all been there.
Honestly, baby, I don't remember.
So he's kind of returned to the good graces of the Phoenix Court and becomes once again this great kind of admiral. But he's also hailed as a kind of a herald of Mathlan, who is the elven sea god, who it is widely believed kind of caught his dead body and, healed it and sent him back out into the world, knowing what the elves face. The other kind of great battle of the time that we've discussed previously.
I'm just going to interject there. I don't trust that motherfucker. I reckon we're going to hear from him again. I'm just
Aislinn? Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's a cunt, isn't he? He's a
bad un, but he's a bad un
cunt radars pinging. Ping, 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 ping.
So, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it was really offensive you referred to it as cunt Dhar. I thought that's just how you
I was going to say that, but I held back. You said it.
Yeah, you think I was talking about my cunt radar, but...
So, we've discussed this next battle at length, and we won't really review it in any great detail, but it's referred to as the Ruin of Ivris, the Ruin of Barry, and that's where Grom the Paunch rocks up.
Barry's Ruin.
And that was only like 100 years before the kind of current time.
And didn't he strap the king to the front of his chariot?
He strapped Menara...
Vibrated him to death.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking hell.
Eltharion the Grim, the son of Vibro Elf, is one of the most obvious cases of retcon within fantasy lore, within High Elven lore, because he leads this great expedition against Naggaroth, and not only is a successful kind of lawnmower invasion of their country, but he actually gets into the city of Nagrond, which is Malekith's home. And he does so by repeating the kind of treacherous deceit that Malekith himself had done, or had carried out to incite the War of the Beard. So some of Eltharion's elite troops dress in the kind of dark elf armor and arms of their slain enemies, and they actually manage to get inside the city in a very kind of Trojan War-esque style, minus the horse, so it's not Trojan War at all, but opens the gate to the High Elf army, which flows in and absolutely decimates the city. That's the retconned version, and Eltharion returns home poisoned. During the attack, he's stabbed, and so his demeanor changes from a kind of devil-may-care rake of Ulthuan to this kind of very serious, grim warrior, and that's where he gets the name Eltharion the Grim. Now, in the 5th edition of Warhammer Fantasy, the tale was kind of changed a little bit. So it was retconned and then re-retconned, I suppose, is the correct way to look at it, where Eltharion, while the army got in and the city was decimated, Eltharion was actually captured by Malekith himself, who had him tortured and then confronted him and executed one by one every member of Eltharion's army by beheading them in front of him, and it took a day to kill all of these High Elf survivors that had been captured by the Dark Elves after the sacking of Nagron.
It's quite a day, isn't it?
Quite a day, a bit busy.
It's all popcorn.
Now we're going to break for lunch, everyone, and Eltharion, you can eat someone's head. Yeah. And at the end of this day, instead of killing Eltharion, what Malekith does is cuts out his eyes. Ooh. And sends him back to Ulthuan, the only survivor of this High Elf army that was, in quotes, successful in attacking Nagron. And so we have a situation where he goes from Eltharion the Grim to Eltharion the Blind. That is actually what the character was called.
Sorry, this isn't the retcon version.
This is the retcon version.
Right, okay, this is the retcon.
So what I described originally was the original version. This was then retconned to be Eltharion the Blind. And Eltharion the Blind he became a swords master of Hoeth. You'll recall when we talked about the White Tower of Hoeth, they have these kind of amazing warriors who use two-handed swords as easy as someone else would use kind of a knife. These guys are amazing. And so Eltharion the Blind became... I've forgotten the name of the movie. It was one of the Rutger Hauer ones where he was blind and he had a samurai sword and he kind of walked the earth as a homeless person solving problems within this movie.
Or in Rogue One, there's the guy who's...
Oh, yes, Chirrut Imwe. Yeah. That kind of vibe.
I never understood.
He became that.
Was he a Jedi, or was he just a fucking badass? He was just a badass.
He was a badass, but he was also force sensitive.
That's right.
That's how he was able to tell where things were.
Yeah. If I was ever blinded, I would become force sensitive. That seems like the way forward.
If you were ever blind, you could never trust me or Chris. Ever. Thumbtacks on the floor, the whole thing.
Blind or not blind, he doesn't trust us.
Blind or not, wasn't
he?
Yeah.
Upside down thumbtacks, like Kral's legs.
That's the thing now, I don't get it, but sure. Yeah.
It's because your calves are bigger than your shoulders.
So Eltharion the Blind then was re-retconned back into Eltharion the Grim, so that the ill-fated battle where Eltharion was, who was originally successful, although poisoned, then became was successful but was captured and blinded and became like a warrior monk, went back to being he was successful but poisoned.
What?
And so that's the current kind of state of Eltharion the Great.
What was the point of that retconning?
Yeah, I don't know. They had some idea of progressing the story along rather than... It's. I think we discussed in the very first episode of this that the Warhammer world is a setting and not a timeline. So it's a place for adventure and warfare, but it's not a continuous story, or it's never going to go beyond a certain date, and so everyone is kind of trapped. It's where you find in a lot of the campaigns, a lot of the heroes have an enormous amount of plot armor, so they're almost killed. Everyone is almost killed all the time. I'm going to close out this episode, which is the last of the kind of history of the High Elves, with a battle referred to as the Invasion of Aetain. And I'm doing this very specifically for a special little someone. So,
hi.
As we've discussed,
hi.
Ulthuan is a floating continent. There's no bedrock as such. And so it's very difficult for a certain race to get in there. But in the kind of back half of the reign of Finubar, the Seafarer, the explorer, Ulthuan was invaded via submersibles by the race of the Skaven. The Skaven landed on the shores of Aetain, hundreds, thousands, possibly even billions, millions, gets of rats and their various Skaven-y weapons land on the shores of Aetain, which is where Lothern is, and are met, start raiding the various towns and villages along the shores. Ultimately, this leads to a major battle between themselves and the kind of Sea Guard of Lothern, who really you're looking at a kind of stalemate, unfortunately, and that's purely down to two things. One is the sheer numbers of the Skaven, and especially Skaven slaves. They just send in the kind of meat curtain, as I like to refer to them, to soak up as much damage as possible before the real troops get in. But also, as they went through the kind of well-manicured countryside of Aetain, they were setting fire to everything they could with their warp fire throwers. And so they were starting to knock over a couple of cheeky waystones. Lots of kind of sacred wooded copses are just incinerated, and a kind of steamroller effect of green fire moves throughout the countryside. I think both figuratively and literally. This great battle is sensed by the warrior priests of Azurian, the Phoenix Guard, who once again make battle with their enemies. They come to the assistance of the Lothern foot troops, both in terms of the elite infantry, the Phoenix Guard proper, and also the winged phoenixes, as opposed to the unwinged phoenixes. Maybe whatever the,
It's the equivalent of a shit griffin.
Yeah, shit griffin.
It's a shit phoenix.
And they tear into the forces of the kind of Clan Rictus. This is the Skaven clan that has attacked Aetain under the leadership of Skizrach. Wow. Great name.
It's like a 90s one-hit wonder English rap.
Yeah. And so what we're looking at here is effectively every aspect of Skaven culture is represented in the force there. They've got the various war machines of Clan Skyr, the assassins of Clan Eshin, the plague monks and plague priests of Clan Pestilence, and the innumerable horrific monsters, beasts, rat ogres, and abominations of Clan Moldar.
Wow. It's a proper smorgasbord.
But once again, phoenixes come to the aid of the elves, and this isn't at all done in line with the range of phoenix miniatures that was released during the same period of time. Nothing to do with that whatsoever. And so,
I mean, it's getting to the point now where I wouldn't be surprised if the elves were just like, oh, another chaos that I don't worry about it. So we're not even going to put our armor on because the phoenixes will deal with that. Just fucking send them out now.
What, we've got another amazing thing. I thought the last thing was the best amazing thing, but we've got a new amazing thing. And we've been around for 3,000 years at least. My goodness. What a surprise. The kind of head of the Phoenix Guard, a chap called Caradrian. Yeah. Caradrian takes command of the army, and while he's atop, he has mounted something called a Frostheart Phoenix, which is a type of phoenix that deals in cold and snow, not fire.
Interesting.
If you see what I mean.
Does the same thing happen, like if it dies, does it kind of explode in ice and then come back as
that's exactly what it does, yeah.
Cool.
So at the center of the Skaven force is this huge abomination, this massive mutated eugenics style organism made up of hundreds of, or DNA from hundreds of other monsters. And Caradrian and his Frostheart Phoenix swoop down, and it's written that Caradrian only strikes 12 blows. He strikes the beast 12 times, and everywhere he strikes
only 12.
Only 12. And so a mere 12, yeah. And so the great abomination effectively is a mixture of, how would you describe it? He gets freezer burned. He freezer burns this abomination to death, and
gives him a really bad headache.
Yeah, and brain freeze, and it explodes. Showering the Skaven ranks with chunks of frozen, jaggy flesh, and this quite literally tears the heart out of the kind of main Skaven force. So they turn tail and flee, and are wiped out by the various forces of High Elf archers, either from Lothern Sea Guard or bowmen proper. And as they make it back to the beach to get in the submersibles, they're met by a rank of Lothern Sea Guard. So every single Skaven and their, submersible engines and all the other kind of evil goings on of ratty kind are destroyed and sunk by the forces.
Take that, you ratty bastards.
But it's fine because there's a million, billion, trillion more anyway where they came from.
Yeah.
Whatevs.
Yeah.
There are drop in the ocean. Literally a drop in the ocean.
So that kind of slapdash summary of 3 Phoenix Kings draws our kind of history of the High Elves at this stage to a close. We will be discussing next episode in some detail the kind of named heroes that are available to High Elf forces and their story, which will kind of expand on the more recent history of Ulthuan itself. There you go.
Jeepers.
Yummy.
Jeepers.
Yummy. Ben, are you still loving the High Elves?
I am.
Are they still
your... I think my favorite part of this episode is Finubar going over and discovering that there are a bunch of humans and they're actually pretty cool and let's be allies. I love the idea of elves being helves.
You love a good co-op moment, don't you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I like the idea of because it's always the case that, or it seems to be often the case that in the moment of need, an elf force turns up and saves the day. Yeah.
Dull. Was the Dark Elves going, surprise, we're still here, and then ambushed right at the beginning of the show. And then the smarmy, complacent High Elves were like, oh no, we were actually wrong. Or they probably didn't say that, did they? They weren't wrong. They knew the Dark Elves. Yeah, I mean, how would the kind of self-righteous, in denial elves dress that one up? Did they intend to be ambushed? Was that the elven will?
They knew that they were around. We were kidding. We hoped they were all gone, but They're
Yeah. Hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Kral, would you say that the 74th Phoenix King or the 190th Phoenix King were your favourites?
Curveball, I thought the 276,392nd Phoenix King was surprisingly impressive. Yeah.
Interesting. I hadn't considered that. That's a
Calidor the 41st, yeah.
Kralidor. The return of Kralidor.
So
I'm back, baby.
Of those three then, so we've got what? Morvael, Bel-Hathor, and Finubar. Like, Finubar's got the most kind of detail about his reign, which I may or may not have done adequate justice to. I kind of like the idea of Bel-Hathor being the kind of the quiet king, the one that goes, or the one who's everyone thinks, we'll get him to do this, that, and the other. And he's like, bam, fuck you, bitches. I'm back.
Actually, I can be decisive.
He very much has the iron surfboard energy of Kurt the Third.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's very much that kind of strike a pose, make a pronouncement, that kind of idea.
Yeah.
I like that.
Dives into a room, says something dramatic, and then walks out.
Yeah.
Drops mic. Just always got some microphone with him so he can drop it and then walk away.
That's it.
Right. We have got to wrap up.
Is it an AI wrap up?
No.
Thank you for listening.
I've got my voice. Bleep blorp. All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, merchandise, and you can sign up for the Laying Down the Lore newsletter, which, when I remember to send it out, includes exclusive info about upcoming releases, behind-the-scenes chat, and some extra lore not covered in the podcast. Again, if you're keen to support the podcast, just click the Support Us link in the description and give us all your goddamn earnings. We'll be back again soon displaying just how little Chris knows about
anything.
The Phoenix Kings. We'll see you then. Bye.
Yeah, we'll see you then, guys. Yeah, see ya. Bye. Bye.
I earnestly love you all, but you are exhausting.
Laying down the law.